Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. My guest today didn't hit the kind of rock bottom that you'd expect. No lost job, no lost marriage, just 20 odd years of a pattern she couldn't quite explain to herself. Fine for months and then unable to stop at one drink once she started. This is why her story resonates so much with mine. I was just like this myself. Olivia is known online as the grey area drinker. Her actual turning point came on a family holiday in Spain, a hangover so bad that it turned into a panic attack. Lying in the hotel bed, convinced that she was going to die and leave her kids without a mum. That night, she made a decision that is now nearly 8 years, and she's now 8 years alcohol free. Olivia's got a master's in health psychology and she runs a podcast, No More Booze. And she helps people spot the exact pattern she lived for over 2 decades. Olivia, welcome to the next chapter.
Hello, Luke. How are you? And hello to all the wonderful listeners who are trying to grab on to a bit of alcohol-free living or sobriety or whatever term feels good to them. And what we always say is, do it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so for some context for my listeners, please, what was your childhood like and how did that transition into the drinking?
Yeah, I'm Irish, as you can tell. I'm rural Irish. I was brought up in a little village in just an hour outside Dublin, kind of like a lot of our community were farmers. It was what it felt like a very equal community. Everyone was kind of the same. I have a mom and a dad who are still together, and I have two brothers, an older one and a younger one. Very close knit family. We are actually meeting up on Saturday, going to a theme park for my brother and my niece's birthday. Look, it was fairly typical. No adverse childhood experiences. I score very low on those. I would have used those in the work that I do. So I wouldn't have experienced poverty, addiction in the home. There was nothing like that. Like there wasn't an abundance of money, but it was the 1980s in rural Ireland. I don't think many people had an abundance of money. So just very average. I had a best friend who lives next door to me. She was my little soul sister. You never saw one without the other. And so I suppose, when I look back, what is my drinking a reflection of? It's not a reflection of the childhood that I grew up in. I wasn't drinking to cope. There wasn't any adverse experiences that led me to drink. But I probably am I developed a bit of anxiety in my teenage years. I have a very active, busy mind. I love crack, as in, fun. Like I love feeling connected to people. I love elation. And, when I look back, I was very impulsive around alcohol, kind of more or less from the get go. So I would do mad shit. Like I would drink faster than everybody else. It was okay for the first couple of times. And so I'm Catholic, right? And we made our confirmation. And when we made our confirmation, we made a pledge not to drink alcohol until we were 18. And I actually held out the longest of all of my friends and didn't drink until I was 14. They all drank in like 12. Sipped beer, and I was a bit of a nerd. And I was all, no, I'm not doing that. So I had 3 vodkas when I was 14. And that was my first array into alcohol. It was fine. And then I kind of was I not I wasn't drinking regularly at 15, but then I moved to a town in Donegal when I was 16 and I waitressed for the summer, and I suppose that's when I started boozing. So I had my own money, we lived away from home, we lived in staff accommodation, we were friends with absolutely everybody. It was a real party town and we loved being out. So like we would go from the hotel restaurant, like sometimes in our uniform, into the nightclub. It was vibrant. There was a lot going on. It was kind of the mid to late 90s. It was and then I headed off to university and I found a lot of friends who drank in the similar ways that I did. Was it contagious? Yes. But I loved it, and I can absolutely say that I did. And in first year in university, I drank heavily, like very heavily. I was probably drinking every day, as in, so Monday night we go to a nightclub called Tracks. No, the Anchor. no tracks. Tuesday, the Anchor, Wednesday, Kelly's, Thursday, the Anchor, Friday, I'd go down to Bundoran to work, and I would go out Friday, Saturday. Actually, sorry, I wouldn't go out on Sunday night. So like that was, and then I didn't really drink in second year to that extent, and then I barely drank in third year. So like there was always highs, lows, mediums. It was that kind of thing. 20s, lived in America. I wasn't much of a boozer there. I was on meds now when I was over there, and didn't drink a whole pile because we were kind of working and we were living. It wasn't very central where we were living, but like we did have a good time. We went to, it was that was we were on the Jersey Shore. So there was a bit of wildness there. Came back, lived in Dublin for a year, went off to Australia and boozed my way around Australia, and then came back and went to England and did a master's. So like there was periods of heavy drinking, light drinking, all that kind of stuff. So I suppose it caught up on me then when I was kind of maybe 25, 26, as in I was depressed from it. Like I came back into a country, all my friends had moved on. I kind of felt, I didn't really fit in. I was going out to try and meet somebody. I got into the work that I'm in now. So like career wise, it was going well. And then I suppose at that stage, kind of 26, 27, 28, it was maybe just Friday, Saturday nights. And then met my husband, and then it all came down. It all calmed down then. And like he's a very dissimilar drinker to me. So like I'm kind of all or nothing, and he's just very composed and he's a take it or leave it drinker. Yeah, which I am absolutely not. So yeah.
In the beginning, then it was to fit in, would you say, and sort of belong, and it was only a social thing. But then in the end, it obviously changed.
Yeah. So like to fit in. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very introspective. So I observe myself quite a bit. Sorry, just cough here. So I'm very aware of who I am and how I interact with people, and I'm an overthinker and probably shy and like every human, and going through teenage years. But I probably remember one of the first times that I felt very relaxed in somebody's company. When you go out when you're young, there's always cool people. I was not one of those cool people, right? But there was a girl I was talking to. She was in my year in school, and she was very cool. And I would have been kind of intimidated talking to her ordinarily. And we used to drink, they were called fuzzy navels. And so they were vodka, peach schnapps, and orange juice. And we used to drink those in the bar that we went to. And I think I had maybe 3 or 4 of them. And I remember feeling very relaxed. And I remember feeling very much myself in a very out of the ordinary situation, like in a pub when I was 17. So I remember that. I remember thinking, oh, wow, I kind of feel like myself. And the booze helped me to do that. And I can look back now reflectively and think that like my brain cottoned on to the fact that booze plus Olivia equals comfort. It eradicates the levels of anxiety that I would have had. It makes me feel more comfortable, more at ease, less socially awkward. So yeah, I think that's probably, and then I've a great bunch of friends. They're all mad. They're like fab, and they it was wild, and we all just kind of loved, like, for me, the best time was actually being hungover the next day when they would all pile into each other's rooms, or like when we lived in halls, or, or over to each other's house, and we talked about like all the mad things that happened the night before. So it was definitely connection, and it was a tool for connection. There's no point saying it wasn't, because it was.
When did you start to question it then, Olivia? When did you think this is a problem? Did anybody say anything, or was it
No,
you
no,
reflecting on yourself?
I was always saying it. I was always saying, this can't be fucking natural. Like, go on, this is mental. Like, why do I feel like this and you don't? And I think the hangovers were so insane. Like, the hangovers were, like, the drinking wasn't fine. Like, I'd black out a lot of the times, right? So, like, physically, I know that I couldn't tolerate a whole pile of alcohol. I'm short, like I'm 5'4", so I don't have a lot of body mass to be able to cope with alcohol. So it was the hangovers that did me in the end. And nobody ever said anything. I was always reaching out to people to say, am I abnormal? Am I am I an alcoholic? Is this what it looks like? And they would always say, no, you're grand. But the one thing that was said to me was like, if I, like by my husband, if I had hangovers like you, I wouldn't drink. So yeah, it was, and I suppose then, like when we got married, I drank in a responsible way with him, if there's such a thing. But like I wasn't hedonistic with him, let's say. And when we drank together, it would never be wild, or it was rare that I would black out. But I suppose towards the end, then I'd had kids, and like having kids is very tough for everybody. And we'd moved out of where we always lived out to the suburbs, and we were used to kind of being, you know, scooting around town to all the fancy places. And you know yourself, Luke, like before you have kids, like you have nobody's needs to meet but your own, right? So all of my money was spent on me. I did a huge amount of traveling. It was all me, 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 and more me. And it was like, where can where's the next fancy bar we can go to? Can we go to a lovely rooftop? Can we eat olives, or when are we going for dinner? And, it was just, and then when we had kids, it was like, okay, so we're out here, and young kids are very all consuming. They're very demanding. And like, not to say that I just assumed that you just drink the way you always do, but I couldn't. As in, like, I suppose drinking at that point might have been. So obviously it had dwindled since I met Gary. And then I had been, alcohol free for considerable times when I was trying to get pregnant. And then when I'd given up for a while with no plan, only the plan was to lose weight and get fit before my wedding. So I had taken a lot of breaks, but they weren't conscious breaks. So anyway, had the kids, and it became very apparent very fast that I couldn't do a lot of things in the same way when I had kids, and drinking was definitely one of them. So it took a long time to dawn on me, a long, 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 long time, you know? Yeah.
How many years would you say you were questioning it then? I mean, was it literally like, was it a decade? Was
It
it
was a
5 years?
decade, yeah. Yeah, it's a
Really?
decade. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you ever try and moderate it in that decade?
God, yeah, yeah. And actually, so I gave up so I looked in my phone to remind myself of 2018 when I gave up. So the Easter of 2018, I had been on a moderation buzz, because I had given up for the month of December in 2017, right? But I had just, because it was easy for me to give up then, and that was the whole month of Christmas. It was easy. I was like, sure, I'm grand. There's not a bother on me. So I'll just continue to moderate. So I remember being in my brother's house for an Easter, and I was moderating, and it did not work out. So I think then there was the kind of like moderation, and I didn't even know that that was moderation. I think, I don't know. It was all trial and error, and I kept doing it and going back to it and going back to it. But yeah, I suppose it finally stuck when I went to Spain.
Hmm. So people like us who've got that busy brain, we spoke about it before we got on the call, and you've mentioned it already. Why do you think some people like your husband can have one or two, and then people like us, I mean, I blame it on my ADHD, but why do you think it is that we cannot seem to have one and leave it and moderate? Why is it?
Well, reflectively, this is my own perspective of it. So I am a suspected ADHD. I have done a lot of screeners on myself. I do not have the cash. As you know, I was telling you, I'm going on a year out of work. And just in terms of priority, like an ADHD diagnosis, I'm sure it's the same where you are, but it's could be upwards of €1,500. But look is there, value in self-diagnosis? There probably is, if there is barriers towards cost and stuff. But I meet all the criteria, right? So I have an exceptionally busy brain. Okay, I'll tell you that when I have one drink, my dopamine, which I now know is my dopamine, goes sky fucking high. And I love that feeling. It's also the feeling when I do sprints and I start to sweat out the top of my lip. I know that I'm going to generate that level of dopamine as well. I just love the feeling of that. I love anything that will get me elevated, an elevated emotion. So I just know that, this is how I view me. So I would have one drink, it would go sky high, and then it would go plummet. And then so Olivia was gone. She had no control over anything, and the body was in charge then. So the body, maybe the brain, the neurochemistry, the neurotransmitters, they were in charge. They were in the driving seat. They were just looking for more dopamine. And I had nothing got to do with it. So I was all or nothing. And, I coach a lot of people now, and they're all or nothing, middle of the road, can't just have one. This is what they kind of call themselves. So it doesn't look problematic as we know problematic drinking, in terms of crashing the car and all those kind of things. Like that, mine was never like that, ever, especially towards the end. Was there touch and go moments? Absolutely. But was there touch and go moments when there was only me? That was probably in my singledom, but definitely not, when I was married with kids and stuff. But yeah, I just think that my brain is different. How I react to alcohol is different. And, I drank for different reasons as I suppose as the lifespan went on. So first of all, it was connection. First of all, it was maybe to dim down the social anxiety. And then maybe it was for connection. And oftentimes maybe it was to relieve stress or to stop a very, very busy mind. We moved into what I thought was a haunted house once. And I got myself into such a tizzy that I literally couldn't go to bed, and I had to have a half a bottle of wine. Didn't have to, but I thought I had to have a half bottle of wine just to calm down my brain to think that I was going to bed with a ghost.
Yeah,
But
I
that was
used
all.
to do it as well. I used to work shifts back in the day, and I used to do when I come home from a night shift, I couldn't sleep, so I used to have a drink or a shot or whatever before I went to bed. So
Yeah.
back then I was getting those those sorts of signs, but it's having that busy mind, isn't it? Trying to slow things
Exactly. And
down.
I've worked with people who do shift work and who literally have to go to sleep at strange hours. And like I did night shifts for a while as well. And I would literally get into bed at 8 o'clock in the morning, wake at 6, and I would wake up going, fuck this. Even though I've had 10 hours sleep. But I have to have sleep. Like there's a lot in my body and my routine that I now know keeps me safe and well. And sleep is one of them.
Yeah, it is so important, and we all know the effects of alcohol on sleep, especially that REM sleep. So, you mentioned Spain a minute ago. Talk us through what happened in Spain, please.
Yeah, so I went to Nurka, and actually I'm going there next year's again for 50th, so I shall whack my steps. And although I can't even remember much anyway. So kids were small, 1 and 3. So I was coming off the back of, so I'd done a 30-day stint in the December. Thought I was absolutely grand. There wasn't a bother in me. And then I tried to moderate, made a show of myself a couple of times, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So it was I was like, I can't do this anymore. These hangovers are from hell, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I had brought a bottle of charcoal with me because I knew I'd have a hangover, right? Because I probably knew I couldn't be trusted. So anyway, went in, we'd kind of had a couple of drinks on the flight, and then I'm not a great flyer or whatever. So couple of glasses of rosé, and then we went to a nightclub, and there's loads of funny stories from the nightclub as well. But like we didn't go to bed till 6 o'clock. Got up the next day, had to move hotels for some mad reason. I booked 2 hotels for 2 different days, but ended up like drinking pina coladas at lunchtime, like ridiculous behavior. Went to bed then in the middle of the day to try and sleep that off, and then went out that night again and had 3 glasses of wine. But in those 3 glasses of wine, can't remember leaving the place. It was like this stunning rooftop kind of place that we were, before the wedding. Anyway, can't really remember going to bed. Seemingly I was rude to the guy on reception. Like Gary used the word obnoxious. I'm not really an obnoxious person. That was a bit of a shock. Then I remembered anyway, look, I went to bed, but woke up the next morning. Oh my God. So I have a catalogue of my top 10 worst hangovers, right? And this was number one. It went straight in at number one. And like this was over 23 years, right? And this was, oh my God, Luke, this was a humdinger. Like it was a humdinger. So woke up, Gary headed off to breakfast. I was like, I can't even speak, let alone go and eat. he headed off and then went like looking around the town. I obviously was having a panic attack in the bed, kept it like my heart was beating like literally out of my chest, went to the toilet, and then I was like, oh my God. I remember like impaling my head against this toilet last night. I'd fallen, I had a bruise on my head. That sent me even more. So, like, panic, sheer panic. And all I kept seeing was like a black body bag that I was literally going to die. My poor little kids wouldn't have a mom, blah, blah, blah. So that was grand. Like, Gary came back and he was like, well, we need to get ready for the wedding. And I was like, I actually think I might be dead. Like, this might be, death, and I know it sounds funny, but like I was in bits, bits. I didn't even have a shower before that wedding, Luke. I was so sick. I couldn't bring myself to have a shower. So anyway, it looked like absolute hell on earth. Went down and I was like, I can't even cope with this. So again, it was a pina colada. And that was it maybe before we went to get the bus. But and that's problematic because if you're drinking to bring yourself back to baseline of normality, like, that's not good. So anyway, had the pina colada, went to the wedding, slept in the church, fell asleep in the church. Yeah, but actually it was great sleep. And it gave me, it was like a party nap. It gave me a new lease of life. Went to the reception, found photos of me drinking white wine at the reception. So I'd maybe about 3 glasses of white wine, couple of gins. Then something started. It wasn't me, like it wasn't me. It was bigger, like it was. I don't know what you call it. Like if you're a believer in the Lord, it was the Lord, right? If you're a believer in the universe, it was the universe. It was something bigger than me. It came upon me, it enveloped me. It had just was like, you're done. So this was the language. I was like, excuse my French, fuck this. Like, Gary, take this gin. It's going to be the last gin I will ever drink in my life. And this feels big, right? I'm like something big is happening within me. And then he's ended up taking a load of pictures of me. So we scooted off then, and I was sober, completely sober at this stage. Like, because I suppose I'd been so hungover, those drinks, and like, it was probably 7 drinks, which would have been a lot for me. Got on the bus and I just remember we sat at the front of the bus and I was like, I can't believe I remember going home from this wedding because it was rare for me to remember. And then it was just this unbelievable feeling within me that this was it, that I was done. And then the next morning, I think we were going the next morning, we were actually. And I saw Russell Burns' recovery book, and I'm big into manifestation. I'm big into signs, and I took that as a sign that it was my first day the rest of my life. It was the 4th of July, Independence Day. All this kind of, there was lots of connotation around that. Went home, bought The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. Read that. A friend of mine, I bought it for them as well. Gave it to them. They were thinking about giving up the booze at the same time. We kind of took notes on that. We were like, oh my God, what about this and what about that? So there was a bit of support in that. They're back on the booze now, but sure, anyway. But yeah, it just kind of took off from there. But there was intention. I read a lot of Joe Dispenza. I'm going to him in September, and he talks a lot about, energy behind intention. And like, I'm not sure I created that energy. I'm not sure if that energy was created by an outside source for me, but there was massive energy behind my intention. And I was done. Oh my God. So like, I could sit here for 7 hours and tell you about every single time I've been hungover in 23 years. And they all accumulated to that point where I was like, this is no way to live. It's no way to live my life. It's no way to raise my children. It's no way to talk to myself. I'm done. And I was done.
So it was like an outer body experience. You
It
felt
kind of
like
felt like that.
you felt like you were sort of watching yourself, and it was a bit of a reflection, a bit of like holding
Yeah.
up a mirror, and then that was it. Why do you think this was different from all those other hangovers? I mean, obviously you said about that accumulation of bad hangovers, and then this was the tipping point. Why was that one different?
So, the way we have a view of ourselves, right? So, like, I would, our kids were really wanted. I'm very much in love with my husband. I'm very much in love with my children. I have a beautiful life, right? And I always imagined that I would be a stunning mother, like able to cope with it all, right? And a couple of times in his little 3 years, I had behaved in a pathetic way. And they're my words, right? And I suppose I'd say maybe 4 or 5 times, like being hungover, Gary taking in, the parenting load and him letting me be me. But me being me was like ridiculous. Like I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be a better version of that. Like a mom who was hungover or a wife who would apologize or, and I think it was an accumulation of all of that. And I just didn't want, and you know what? I was sick of being really cruel to myself as well. I was sick of all the things that I said to myself when I was hungover. I was sick of, you know, like being ashamed of who I was, and like I just there had to have been something bigger and better for me than this. And there was, and I suppose I kind of surrendered to it. And the results have been stunning and amazing and nothing that I have expected and challenging at times and misunderstood by a huge amount of people. But we move on and it's just been incredible. Would I go back to boozing? Not for diamonds, and big fat diamonds at that, like, not even for them, and I love diamonds, but, like, not even for, Elizabeth Taylor's, ring.
When you know, you know.
Oh my
That's it.
god, when you know, you know. And now but I didn't have because I'd done a few of them, I didn't have a lot of, self-trust, but now looking back, it was very different. I tried a couple of times to give it up, and then I'd be like, Long Island iced tea, I'll have one of them. Or, oh, you know what I mean? I didn't, my resolve was very weak. But with this, it was just different. And like when I came back, I just went straight into being a mom again. So, like, literally, they were tiny, they were gorgeous. She had this little blonde head. She looked like a little Swedish baby. She was stunning. He was cute out the door. Like, they were adorable. But, like, they were 3 in 1. And my God, you cannot meet your own needs when you have small kids. All you do is meet their needs on a constant basis. So, like, I just went straight back into that. I've looked on pictures of it. Like, I don't think it was actually, we had a wedding soon enough after that, like in County Monaghan in a castle, actually, the castle where Paul McCartney got married. And I remember being at that. And that was only a couple of weeks after that as well. So that was fine. Like, that was okay. But my resolve was strong. And I just kept pushing through it and, going to bed at night, especially that night with a wedding, that was kind of novel. And then waking up the next day. And I think the thing that kept me most motivated was Sunday mornings, and I have a lot of goals and I'm always trying to meet goals, and having them be met as opposed to a bottle of wine on a Friday night and you're not right till kind of Wednesday. So it was, yeah, I liked it.
It holds you back so much, and so many people have got so much potential. But I think we just use it to cope, use it to escape. And yeah, I think it served a purpose for me back in the day. I mean, I spoke about this on your podcast when I come on yours, but the version of me now, yeah, it's so different. You've really got to shift your identity, haven't you? You've got to, like you were saying about the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I know we both follow Matt Cook. And you've got to change your identity. You've got to really move into being that better version of yourself.
Absolutely. And like I'm doing a bit of identity shifting currently, moving from one job into like a business. Like, and I never thought I would be self employed, even though both of my brothers are. But like, that's like I have to become a person then, you have to become an authority and like an expert, but like maybe an expert through lived experience, or like that's discombobulating to your nervous system as well. So I take things very slowly because I can't cope otherwise. So you're just constantly shifting this version of yourself. And I've recently gone back to exercise like in an intense way. So even that part of me and Gary we've been doing a lot of walking. He is off for a lot of the summer as well. And like we're talking about who we want to be now, like in the next 20 years. I want to be an animal. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to waste away in a nursing home, or I don't want to I want to be able to be fully independent and to have a really full life. And, we deserve better than that. And we deserve better than what we think we knew about alcohol. All of us do. Like, it's associated with 200 diseases. Like, there's so many health harms associated with it. And I suppose I was a long time off the booze before I realized a lot of this. It was for my own stuff. It was the hangovers. It was this, that, and the other. It was my own goals as a parent. But then when you begin to kind of really scratch the surface, it becomes murkier, and I would absolutely encourage anybody to read, to listen, to get as much information as you can for you and for your own empowerment to, none of us want to live a stagnated life. Alcohol made us all small, it absolutely made me small. Like, and a lot of people I know too. And the removal of it has allowed me to, you know, be a better version of myself. Like, am I peaceful? No, not really all the time, but I'm a lot more peaceful than I was, you know?
Content in your own skin, and yeah, happy
Yeah. Yeah.
happy with who you are. You haven't got to take a drug to deal with life,
Yeah,
essentially, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I do. And I teach a lot about the window of tolerance when I'm working with groups as well, and how we can expand our window of tolerance and how we do things that kind of bring us discomfort. But like, again, when it's intimidating to our nervous system, we take it a tiny bit at a time. Like, did I arrive at this overnight? No, it's been 8 years. So it's incremental, small incremental changes all the time. And our habits really help us, our mindset, our, how we can reframe things. Like, I come at it from a lot of different angles as well. Like, so my degree is social psychology, so I look at how society, how we act in terms of, as social beings, as social animals. Health psychology, then, behavior change, how we, is it us who thinks that we affect our health, or the world around us, I suppose our locus of control. And, I work a lot with change in behaviors and the stages of change model and all that kind of thing. Then, when you look at your mindset, how to reframe your own mindset, stuff like that, you talked about your childhood, and, there's a lot of people, a huge cohort of people who would have experienced adverse childhood experience and adversity in their childhood and trauma that do impact on their levels of drinking, so yeah. And then I suppose knowing about the science of alcohol, what it does to us, what it does to our body, how it affects every single system in our body, so taking all those different bits of knowledge and maybe working on one every other week, but we all have the ability to do that, whether by ourselves or in community or with a coach or whoever.
You focus a lot on the grey area drinking, Olivia. What does that term mean to you, and why did you come up with that?
Well, yeah, it certainly wasn't me, but I didn't feel that I was an alcoholic, right? That's not something that I felt, right? So I wasn't physically dependent on alcohol. I could give it up for months and years at a time, and I did. But I suppose when I had one, and I kind of explained that earlier, that physiologically it set something. It was like a domino effect, let's say. So I was I would have called myself anything if I meant that I would give up the booze. I used to say I would have called myself Coco the Clown. I would have put any label on me. But just if it meant that I would never drink again, that's the goal that I was looking to achieve. But I had heard a podcast with a lady called Jolene Park. She talked about grey area drinking, and she witnessed it in both herself and a lot of the people that she had worked with as well. This kind of a space between maybe the, now and again drinkers, and then the end stage, like that it all occurs on a spectrum, and that somewhere in the middle there's kind of the gray area. So the people who don't kind of fit the profile for alcoholism or severe alcohol use disorder, but who are high functioning, but they drink more than they intend to. It doesn't look problematic to others, but they still have negative experiences when they do drink. So, like hangovers, anxiety, all that kind of thing. People who would drink to relieve stress or to manage emotions and all that kind of thing. And then they're able to stop. But I suppose the difficulty is in being kind of staying stopped or whatever. And like, even though other people don't see that their drinking is a problem, they kind of fret about it unknown to themselves. And I just hearing that explanation, I was like, "Shit, that's exactly me." So yeah, I felt that that was an explanation for the way which manner patterns that I kind of drank. So I identified heavily with that one.
Yeah, the same with me. So many people as well, since I've stopped drinking, they've said, you didn't really have a problem, did you? Surely you can come out and have one with us. But they don't see the aftermath, do they? They don't see those hangovers. They don't feel that anxiety that you're talking about. And we love to put labels on people, don't we? And so we like to box people. We we like to section people off. So yeah, when you say about, because so many people, even now, they'll still say to me, "Yeah, but Luke, you weren't an alcoholic." But I was exactly the same as you when I heard that term, grey area drinker. I think the first time I heard it was from Andy Ramage, and
Yeah.
I heard it and I thought, "Wow," and he explained it so well, and I was like, "That is me." And yeah, and I felt good to have a label almost. It was like, wow, that, they are my people. That is what I am. I'm not an alcoholic. I've got a drinking problem, probably. That's how I would define it. And yeah, it's a great term, gray area drinker, I think.
Yeah. So this is how I describe it, right? I was a problematic drinker because drinking caused a lot of problems in my life. Now, like, there's a whole school of thought that says that the problems turn up on the inside first, and then they make their way to the outside, like the drink driving or whatever. But like, I can't answer that. I can't say I would have ever, but I gone down that. But I do know that my drinking was reducing from probably age 30 onwards, and then I gave up at 37. So I was removing it, going back, removing it, going back, removing it, going back, because I needed more and more evidence to say that, like, Jesus, Olivia, you shouldn't be drinking, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You were building up that evidence. You were proving to yourself that you could do it, and you were dipping your toe in the water. This
All
is
the
what I
time.
say to people. It's not something you just stop overnight. If you've been doing it for decades, then you've got to break away from it slowly, because it's going to be so overwhelming, and it's going cold turkey straight away. It's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, so true. I mean, you talk about the dopamine cycle as well, alcohol borrowing time from tomorrow's joy. I can definitely resonate with that as
Mm.
well. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I suppose, like, how I kind of explained it earlier. So, like, I would then, you know, all the dopamine, all the dopamine, all the dopamine. So it was like high, crash, high, crash. And then towards the next day, then it would be crash city. So what I experienced in those kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of like highs, on a night out or whatever it was, they would literally come crashing down the next day. And like, I work with loads of people as well, and they experience the exact same thing. And I suppose now, as we get older, as our kind of tolerance drops, our sensitivity rises, this becomes more evident in people. And, they're beginning to kind of think, God, maybe it's not looking so good for me. Plus, I think we're probably one of the first kind of generations of people to experience alcohol use on this level anyway. So we don't like a generation ago, there wasn't people kind of giving up alcohol in midlife. There wasn't really talk about, like, I'm menopausal, right? Sorry, Luke, but like, it is, it's a very important factor in my life currently. So, like, there's a lot of people in midlife who are at that stage, women, obviously, because I work with women a lot, and who just can't. There's so much going on in their physiology and their hormone levels that they find that even one drink costs them a couple of days as well. So it interferes with too many systems, our brain chemistry, our sleep. You talked about REM sleep there. We're not processing stuff. We're waking up the next morning even groggier than we were the night before. The problems maybe multiplied. You're not working them through the system where we process them either. So yeah, it's definitely a borrow from tomorrow kind of and I suppose the sooner you kind of get on board with that, are you willing to, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are the costs
Yeah.
worth the benefits? And generally, if people are very honest, they're not.
Yeah, and it definitely gets harder when you get older, and you definitely don't bounce back
No.
from a hangover when you're older. Definitely not. this is this is why we help people around our sort of age, right? Because
Yeah,
yeah, you can't bounce back like you were when you were a teenager.
absolutely not.
So if someone's listening to this, Olivia, and they recognize, that they can relate to what we're saying, but they still think that they haven't got a problem. Well, I mean, what would be the honest question that you'd tell them to ask themselves?
Yeah, so like I just said it there, like is the cost worth the benefit? Like so, what are you getting for it? Like I'd get a piece of paper, put a cross in the middle, put the costs of alcohol and the benefits of alcohol, and then underneath it put the costs of alcohol free living and then the benefits and weigh it up like that. So, and make a decision. If you can't do that by yourself, get somebody to help you. Ask our friend ChatGPT. They're always good at guiding us around certain stuff. But, just even that, is it worth it? Like, what, and also, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of the wedding? I don't know, like, what do people usually drink around with you? Is it weddings, like summer holidays, all inclusives, hens, stags, whatever? Yeah, so is it really worth it? And generally it's not, you know?
Yeah, I was recently on a stag do, and the I was there was me and one other guy there who wasn't drinking, thank God. So I had a sober buddy. But a couple of the guys, I've mentioned it on here before. A couple of the guys, it got to about 10 o'clock in the evening, and they were drinking cups of tea, and I was like, what are you guys doing? What's happening? And they said, "Oh, Luke, it's brilliant having you here because we haven't got to keep up with everyone else and carry on drinking and being pulled along with the group." He said, "Because you don't drink, we can stop drinking whenever we like." And I thought that was fascinating. Is it the amount of people that drink because they feel like they need to, and you get to that certain stage of life, and you're like, I just don't need to be doing this anymore. It's not serving a purpose. It's not half as good as it used to be, and I just can't take it anymore. So I found that really fascinating when those couple of guys said that. There was like 15 of us, and
Yeah, so you gave them permission.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, we're social creatures, aren't we? We're tribal. We're tribal
absolutely.
creatures, and we just get pulled along with the crowd, don't we? We really do. We don't want to be that odd one out. That's why I
No, I
think it
didn't.
takes so much courage. Takes so much courage to stand up
It's
and do it.
the bravest thing in the whole wide world, and I'm really proud of myself because, like, it's not for everybody, but, like, it's tough going. And I had a community call before I came on to you, and I have a couple of clients from County Mayo, basically, which is the other side. And I don't know if you saw any of this online, but maybe I'm just in a bubble here. But that team, County Mayo, basically hadn't won our like national sport final in 75 years, and they won it. So like there was literally, like, they're mad people anyway, they're great. And but they literally, the whole county went drinking for like the last 2 weeks and just kind of tweaking out and, talking to people around, they might have felt on the periphery of celebrations because they weren't drinking and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like you said, we're absolutely social creatures. We are born to connect. We are born to be, in harmony and in unison and in bonds with each other, and alcohol has kind of taken over. And, uh, there is a book about the history of alcohol and, it's caused a lot of things. But I suppose it has gone absolutely book mad in the last kind of 50 years in terms of the level at which we're drinking.
You've spoken quite a lot about being a parent, Olivia. I specifically help dads and their relationship with alcohol and being that better role model for their children. What do you've mentioned a couple of things, but what do you think's changed for you being being a parent compared to what you were like 8 years ago?
Well, I work with kids and young people, right? So I've 25 years of experience, right? So I kind of know how to handle kids. My husband does as well. So like, we were well equipped going into parenthood, but not well enough because it's so hard. But I'm okay. So I don't have the cortisol levels running through my body, right? So I'm not as reactive. Okay. So I'm not as shame filled. I'm much more even. I'm a lot more at peace. I have better levels of regulation myself. I can let things kind of slide. It just, I'm calmer, I'm nicer. I'm more able to regulate myself and kind of regulate. I talk an awful lot about regulation and co regulating with the kids and stuff like that. And, let's say, now I'm just talking in roundabouts here. I don't remember any specific times where I was very hungover and I was short tempered. Like there's not specifically anything like that, right? But I'm sure there had been maybe times where you see, alcohol brought in me a lot of shame. So I would have always been guilty of everything and ashamed of myself, right? So, but I'm sure there was times where I was short tempered as a result, right? But now that's, and you realize very quickly that you can't be short tempered with a kid. Like if you shout at them, then you have to calm them down for a full hour. So like there was no shouting going on here, right? But I'm just, I'm a nicer person. I'm calmer. I'm better equipped to deal with the ups and downs of being a mom, a very involved mom. Like the same as everybody else. We all love and adore our kids. We all want the best for them. We all want them to have, a good experience of life. And, whatever hardships they'll go through, they'll go through. But I don't want for them to go through any hardships because of me and the way I behaved.
Yeah. It's about regulating that nervous system, isn't it? I mean, when you're drinking, you cannot do it. You're on that roller coaster all the time. You're high, you're low, and when you're drinking as well, I remember you've mentioned this a couple of times about your life revolving around a bar or drinking. I would go to social events, and I would always make sure that there was a bar or we were close to a pub or whatever that might be. And I remember, like, the kids would be playing and we'd be drinking, and they'd be coming backwards and forwards. And yeah, so many of the clients I work with, when they quit the booze, whether they're a month down the line, whether they're 2 months down the line, all that guilt and shame comes up, doesn't it? And they start and they feel really, really bad and resentful about all the things that they've done in the past, and they blame themselves. But it's all part of going sober and going alcohol free. It's accepting what's happened, but moving forward. But it's really,
Yeah.
really tough.
Really tough. And like, as you know, like it's a central nervous system depressant, right? So it depresses all of our emotions, even the kind of joyful ones as well. So everything comes up to the top. So like I did a lot of healing, right? And I'm very spiritual. I go to specific healers. So they have helped me heal. And that's how I healed out of a lot of the shame. Like I wouldn't be able to speak to you now and, tell you know, fruity stories that eventful life events. And, I keep a lot of them under wraps, Luke, because I'm not telling that shit to the general public. As we all do, brackets, we all know what went on, So yeah, so they've helped me heal. And like there's no shame. It is what it is. I'll never go back to that person. I'm very confident in who I am now. It's a nice place to be at.
So, if you could go back and give your younger self some advice, Olivia, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever that might be, what would you say to her?
I've often said this in a jokey way. Like I had 3 vodkas when I was 14 on a Saturday night in an over 18s nightclub, but I would have given up drink on the Sunday. No, I'm only joking. Like it happened the way it happened because it happened the way it happened. Okay, what advice would I give to myself? I would be. I would have said make more conscious decisions to do it earlier. Like have more of a plan in place, right? So said like I gave up for 30 days in December 2017 and I got derailed by a Singapore sling, right? I wouldn't get derailed by a Singapore sling again. I'd have a plan in place. I would have maybe, but look at you can't. I don't know what. I'm happy. I've no regrets. I really don't have no regret. I don't have any regrets. But look at what I would hate my daughter to go through the level of self-flagellation that I did. So, like, give yourself a break. You're actually grand. You know, that kind of thing. Stop being so hard on yourself. I'm incredibly hard on myself. So, yeah, it's something I'm trying to phase out in my life. But I would probably that. Stop being so hard on yourself. You're
Stop
actually a nice
stop being
person.
hard on yourself. Yeah, it's like we were just saying, isn't it? It's being being so hard on yourself. But then I guess if you weren't so hard on yourself, maybe you wouldn't have pulled yourself out of that hole. So it goes back to the whole what you've been through shapes you and having no regrets because you are the person you are today because of your past events, right? It's all part of the journey, as corny and as cliche as it sounds.
And it's a linear timeline,
Yeah,
according to my husband.
yeah.
So, like, it's all like, and I do, and I read a lot of near death experiences, right? And like, they say the people who have them say that we choose this exact body, this exact experience, this exact timeline, this exact space and time reality, whatever, to get exactly the experience that our soul needs. You know, we're just veiled and we don't realize that we are of divine essence.
Divine timing, like we spoke about before. What does the next chapter look like for you then, Olivia? And where can people find you?
So the next chapter is me. I have taken a career break from my job. I am going to, we were talking earlier about my fridge magnet says, take the risk or lose the chance. So I'm taking the risk as opposed to losing the chance. I'm going to work it out for a year, see how I get on. So the next chapter looks like that. I'm going to become, as I'm always on a forward journey of getting better and personal development, become more evolved, become nicer, kinder, more loving of those around me, but specifically myself as well. And yeah, just I want, you know what? Me and Gary went for a walk today, and I was like, I want to laugh more. You know, I like a simple life. I don't need much to keep me going. I like to laugh. I love people. I love connecting with people and just more of that. If people can find me, I have a website. It's called www.grayareadrinker.ie. I'm on Instagram at Grey Area Drinker, and I have a podcast called No More Booze. So if they want to listen to you and 133 other people talking about alcohol free living, check it out on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your pods.
It's a brilliant podcast. It actually helped me a lot in early sobriety.
I love it.
Definitely, Olivia. Yeah, I really appreciated it. It was one that I always wanted to get on, and I remember I kept on hassling you, and eventually, you yeah you come to, and yeah. I think that was well over a year ago now because I
Yeah.
I think we recorded it over TT. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, it was. Yeah.
because I remember. I remember
Look
getting.
at you now, Luke.
Yeah, I know. Wow, what a difference.
Yeah, look at your pod with your own pod as well. Podcasting's amazing.
It is. It's brilliant. And,
Yeah.
getting to meet inspiring people every week and ask them all these deep and meaningful questions. I absolutely love it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fab.
It is. It is. So thank you so much for coming on today, Olivia. I really appreciate your time. I know you're so busy with everything. You had a call tonight, but yeah, you managed to squeeze me in. So thank you so much. I love your energy and I love your honesty. And yeah, I've got no doubt that you're going to absolutely smash it in this next year. And I can't wait to see what the next chapter is going to be for you. I look forward to following your journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luke. I've loved it. Really loved it. I'm a truth teller, is right. Yes.
Yeah, you are. No, brilliant. Thank you, Olivia.
Thanks, Luke.